The state of the U.S. economy is dire, as we all know. There's persistent high unemployment. In my opinion, neither party has a way to put America back to work. Unfortunately, the president, took August off and came back in a very confrontational mode. He's really not serious about doing anything other than getting himself reelected. He's not serious about jobs. Last week, he signed in a White House ceremony the so-called Leahy-Smith America Invents Act. Well, some of you worked on it. Your bosses were lobbied on it, certainly. And what we've done is we've taken a 220-year-old American patent system that was really our crown jewel, that created the wealth to fund the Department of Defense, to fund the efforts that you're talking about that we need. And we Europeanized it. And conservatives used to talk about Europe, they point to places like Germany as economically sclerotic. Half the population was on welfare because there weren't enough jobs there, no job creation, sort of a corporatist economy dominated by labor unions and big corporations. And that's who backed the America Invents Act. It was big IT, Apple, Cisco, Intel, HP, big multinational corporations, big pharmaceutical companies, and Wall Street banks. When I was stationed in the Foreign Service in Tokyo in 1986, you could, and you still can, lose your wallet on the subway and get it back intact the next day. There's this massive effort to get wallets of tsunami victims back to heirs. I mean, there's billions of yen that are floating around. But I thought Japan was the most institutionally corrupt country I'd ever seen. Washington is getting to that point with these big four spending over $300 million over the last 4 sessions lobbying Congress to pass this act. Most members had no idea what's in it. Here's what's in it that doesn't work. We're changing from a first-to-invent system, which our founders put in the Constitution, to a first-to-file system. What's wrong with first-to-file? Well, it means the person who can hire the most lawyers, who has the biggest staff of scientists and inventors, they can go work with the lawyers to file the patent applications. You have to file early and often. A patent application costs between $10,000 and $40,000. That is beyond the reach of most of our small inventors. By the way, in terms of industrial job creation, for the last 25 years, the multinationals have created no net new jobs in the United States. In the last 10 years, they've fired 2.9 million Americans, and they've hired 2.4 million people overseas at their overseas operations. We've lost 50,000 companies who employ 500 or more as they're replaced by Chinese middlemen and Indian middlemen, suppliers to these big plants. First to file is a disaster. It's a race to the patent office that the rich win. There's something called prior user rights that has massive implications for our national security. The Constitution says, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, that inventors and authors shall have an exclusive right to their writings and inventions. Well, prior user rights, which was not in the Senate bill but it's in the House bill, carves out an exception. You can hide technology now for as long as you want, and then someone files a patent and gets the patent, and then you say, oh, but we were using it. Here's our record. We were using it. So that means that the inventor no longer has exclusive rights to his or her patent. There's a carve-out. And this is these first two items are simply unconstitutional. This definition of exclusive is going to go up to the Supreme Court, as is first to file versus first to invent. It cuts out the grace period. The grace period is something that, a simple example, you can't show your invention, you can't sell it, you can't demonstrate it, you can't bring it into a room full of venture capitalists or angel investors. The Wright brothers flying their airplane at Kitty Hawk would have lost the right to patent that airplane under this new law coming in. Why? Because it was a public use or a public demonstration of their technology. Does that make any sense? Not to me, it doesn't. There's something called Section 18, which is a Wall Street bailout. It's aimed basically at one company, the fellow that invented the electronic check cashing system. You know, you used to get an envelope full of checks, your written checks, once a month from your bank. Now you go online. All those checks are destroyed. They don't have to be shipped around the country by FedEx, et cetera. And the big Wall Street bank stole this fellow's technology. He has sued them successfully for $800 million so far, and there are 30 more suits he has pending. So now we want to undo that. We want to go back and re-examine his patents, which were strengthened originally when they were challenged. Also, Section 18, these cases have been litigated up to the Supreme Court. So now we're going to, in another unconstitutional move, allow the Patent Office examiners to overturn possibly Supreme Court decisions, appellate court decisions, et cetera. There's something called post-grant review. It's a new system. We used to have one system of re-examination of a patent that might have been erroneously issued. Now we're going to have 4, including this post-grant review. Judge Paul Michel, who is he stepped down to fight this bill. He was the chief appellate judge on the Federal Circuit, which was the court where all patent appeals come. He says, with post-grant review, I can tie up a patent for 10 years, no problem. Anyone wants to hire me. And what does that mean for a small investor? It means you're forced to sell out to a big guy, right? I mean, basically it's a form of blackmail. What's going to happen? Well, those of you who thought you kissed this bill goodbye and, you know, you saw the last of it, I'm afraid that's not going to happen. It's going to be back before Congress. Chief Justice Roberts, in a case in May called Stanford versus Roche, to Stanford, the university, their technology department versus the chemical company, drug company Roche, says very clearly the United States has always been a first-to-invent system, not a first-to-file system. On the prior user rights, the Supreme Court has never ruled on the word exclusive. If you know anything about the Supreme Court and the justices, they salivate to get a question of first impression. They're going to overturn that. So, you know, people on the small business side, the investor side, the individual inventor side are going to pursue multiple lawsuits. Section 18, there'll be lawsuits. It'll be found unconstitutional. The PTO has a backlog now of 700,000. Congress, since the early 1990s, has consistently raided PTO fees and stolen them, in a sense, and put them to other uses. Those are 700,000 patent applications, not every one of which is going to be, you know, create 100 jobs, but a lot of them will create 1,000 jobs. They're stalled at the Patent Office. With the CR, there was a whole deal back and forth that I won't bore you with, but essentially the Patent Office, especially in the CR environment, is going to be short about, you know, 28% of its budget this year. That means no new examiners. It has the oldest computer system, the most hackable computer system in the entire U.S. government. And of course, this is where, you know, if the Chinese are hacking the CIA and DOD, believe me, they're into the U.S. PTO computers. I mean, Japan and South Korea track these things. There are 18,000 hacks a day from the Chinese. We don't want to know, so we don't bother to track them. Essentially what this means is, in Germany, 0.6% of patents are issued to individual inventors. In the U.S., 20 years ago, it was 30%. Then 10 years ago, it fell to 20%. Today, last year, it was 9%. Okay? This was the essence of American exceptionalism in business. You know, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in the garage inventing the Mac, or, you know, Jack Kirby with the transistor, etc. I mean, there are lots of examples. But now that these companies are big companies, they don't want any upstart company coming and upsetting the marketplace. And since the act passed, you'll notice that there's these major acquisitions, if you read it all, like Google spending all this money for patent portfolios from Motorola and Nortel, et cetera. So patents are important to these big companies, and they basically want to get as many as they can and shut out the little guys who have really been the source of American job creation, American exceptionalism. I don't know where the wealth creation is going to come from in this country. I mean, you can pass all the bills you want, hiring firemen and school teachers and fix up schools and bridges, but these aren't lasting jobs. There's no wealth creation involved in that. There's no innovation on the scale that we've seen historically in this country. And out of wealth creation comes tax revenue. So we have the Republicans and Democrats fighting over this shrinking pie. And, if you think that, simply cutting taxes and regulation is the answer, I mean, it's part of the answer, don't get me wrong, but I represent 2,000, by the way, I should have said, U.S. Business and Industry Council is 2,000 American manufacturing businesses. A lot of them have patent strategies. We don't know what's going on with health care, right? We can't hire because we just don't know what the tab is. Taxes, when you add federal, state, local, they're killing us. And then the Chinese are manipulating, or all the East Asians, the Europeans, they're manipulating their currencies, they give out subsidies. So we're expected to compete against foreign governments and companies that are heavily subsidized by those governments. Now we can't invent. And, so this is where I thought I was going to depress everybody. Okay, we're on a path to this corporatist state. And, Bill Clinton said in 1996 when he signed the law, this is the end of welfare as we know it. Well, right now we're at the beginning of welfare as we've never known it, with, millions and millions of unemployed and, unprecedented extension of unemployment benefits, which I'm for. A lot of these people, it wasn't their fault, they lost their jobs. So just to follow, to end with the national security implications, the Chinese can take it. First of all, the chief judge of the Chinese patent court, retired, said this is a great bill for China because we can hack and we can infringe. I mean, I'm liberally paraphrasing, okay, but we can hack, we can infringe, and, we're not going to get caught. Under prior user rights, someone files a patent application in the U.S., the Chinese say, oh, well, we've been using that stuff, for 5 years here, so they get a carve-out. Or they beat you to the patent office. They hack you, they take your technology, and they file a patent on you. And believe me, anyone who doesn't think that the Chinese are like the hackers are like the cartels, I mean, they are all over the place. They are hacking into, every possible computer that they can get into that has any technological worth. And half their students here are spies. They're just soaking up all the American technology that they can. Same thing in Europe. So I don't know how we're going to fund DOD and other government security functions in the future, and unless these suits are successful, Congress reconsiders this bill, PTO is going to fall apart under the weight of less money with this CR environment, and people rushing to file patents. It's going to collapse. We don't have a rational function. Patents they're not like hunting licenses. So you don't, file for your patent and you pay a fee and that keeps this little, building in the back of the shopping center, the strip mall, alive. They're vital to the American economy. We got to get them out of the judiciary committees, into the science and technology committees, and get the Patent Office properly funded, not just with its fees, but as part of the U.S. science and technology budget because of the contribution of invention to our society. If we don't do these things, we are in real trouble for the future. Thank you.